Roll call. Fasting.
Here.
Bush.
Here.
Chambers.
Here.
Dahl.
Here.
Lindsay.
Here.
Steffes.
Here.
Did I give everybody?
Done.
Done? Sorry.
Here. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's start out with board communications. Did anybody receive anything that they want to bring forward?
I received several comments about our decision about whether to lift the interim tag Mr. Wainwright for superintendent. I received several comments about and questions about why we're discussing going to an extra referendum. So I think as long as we hear, I'd like to hear the citizen comments first, and then I'll be whatever wasn't mentioned, I can add to the discussion.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I actually heard some of the comments supporting Mitch for superintendent. On the second thing, though, I heard far more comments supporting the idea of going to referendum for all new school. I would say at least a dozen people contacted me. So that was the two things I noted. I did have one contact me that said the public has spoken and we should go ahead with the current plan. So it was sort of a 12-to-1 sort of thing.
Okay. Anybody else?
I did have a couple staff members reach out in support of Mitch.
Okay. Joel, do we have a sign-up sheet?
We have a note on it.
Okay, then I'll just open it up to the floor.
I would like to recognize Head McKenna Reichling on the student council
Okay,
speak
sorry,
first.
thanks.
Yep.
Okay, I'll just stand right here. First of all, I'd like just to pass out a piece of paper. This is what I'm just going to be talking about, so you guys can follow along. So my name is McKenna. I am the student government president. So I bring everything the student council talks about in their meetings to the student board, the school board. So I just want to begin with a conversation was started as a result of what recently occurred in the Baraboo Community and School District. Ms. Daver asked the group if they felt Menor Point's high school students should use sensitivity training. After we realized that there was a large number of students in the group that did not know that sensitivity training is meant to show people that their attitudes and behaviors may unwittingly cause offense to others, we worked on a preliminary outline of what the student government would like to propose. So after talking everything, we proposed that the students have an all-day or half-a-day social awareness day. In this, students will rotate in small groups to presentations, similar to a conference format. We, the students, stress that we would like the presenters to be individuals that have personal or first-hand experience with the topic being presented. Possible presentation topics that were mentioned were social media responsibility, gender, race, and sexual orientation sensitivity, and sexual harassment awareness and protection. The student council is still talking about this, and we have a meeting on Wednesday, so we'll further discuss this and may come up with possible ideas. Overall, the response was very enthusiastic, and this is an event that the group feels it would really turn into a model for other schools. The second thing that the student council talked about was the lack of storage. With the recent operational referendum being passed, we would like consideration to be given to the lack of storage our building currently has. We know that this may sound strange coming from a student perspective, but it has come up as a point of discussion at more than one meeting, especially because we're holding a dance this Saturday, and it's being held in the cafeteria, and for that to happen, we need to clear out the stage, and there's so much stuff in the stage, it's going to take a lot to clean up and everything. Areas such as the stage, the home ec room, the uniform storage area above the gym, and the halls. we have listed the reasons why. Each time we need to use the stage, we have to spend an hour clearing it out into the hall and then an hour moving it back. The uniform storage area is almost impossible to organize and find what is needed for the season. We would love to use the home ec room for enhancement classes and possibly a student lounge after school activity participants that are in holding pattern. Okay, so what I mean is, so like students sometimes practices at like 5, and like it's kind of hard for students who live out in the country to go home and then come back and waste gas. So it'd be a nice place for students just to stay here, like watch TV, just hang out until practice, which would make it a lot easier and save some gas. The clutter in the hall does not promote school pride. We feel that Mineral Point High School has always gone above and beyond to be the best. Our motto is like look good, feel good, so we want to represent that. And we would like our space to reflect this. Thank you very much for your time and consideration and for giving us the opportunity to be heard. Do you have any questions?
So the home ec room cannot be used now because it's full storage?
Yeah, so right now there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of, like the janitors don't have enough room to hold all the supplies the teachers don't need, so it's getting put in home ec room right now. I actually worked here this summer cleaning out everything, and everything went in there. That was the first place that everything went in. So yeah, there's no space to do anything in that room. And I know like RTIs, we've been doing something new. We've had like enrichment classes where like students can play game like Jeopardy or go to the gym and stuff. And I know a lot of students have been wanting to do like learning how to cook or sew or like things kind of like that. And that's when the home ec room would come into place. So that's just something.
Thank you.
Yep. Is that all?
Thank you, McKenna.
I'm going to open it up to the audience. If nobody signed up, would anybody like to speak?
I'm guessing I was supposed to sign up. So at the end, you guys are gonna discuss on the referendum, and I sent the school board an email earlier just because I had heard a lot, like apparently a lot of you guys have, from people when I'm at Menards or whether I'm up at Point Foods or wherever, just people coming up relatively upset about not having the option for the kind of where it was coming from. And it was, the odd part about it is I was getting it from both sides. Which was confusing to me. I was getting it from the people that I really expected to be kind of on that no vote of my circle, and I was getting it from the people that were on that yes vote kind of circle. So that was confusing to try to figure out where everybody was coming from in that situation. And then I was here during the summer in support of Mitch actually, and so while I was here watching most of your guys' meetings, that's when I was paying attention to the referendum talk and stuff also. Otherwise, I personally probably also wouldn't have been as knowledgeable about how it all went down and whatnot too. So I shot you guys an email and got some responses back from many of you guys as well. And one request was to figure out, where is the staff, where was the staff on that situation. And I had a pretty good sense of where that was also, but again, only based upon the people that approached me. Or the ones that I talked to, so I was cautious on where that information was coming from. So, shout out an email to all staff. I went and talked to Mitch and made sure that that was going to be totally fine and wasn't going to cause any issues. Sent out an email, and basically it was just a 2-question response, which I gave to you guys, and I made more packets of them also. The first question was, do you support the building of a new school versus renovating an existing school? I couldn't get the survey to give the numbers, only the percentage, so if you want the numbers, I can do that. 66 people responded, ended up being 90% was in favor of a new school versus the renovation. The second question was to break it down, because I wanted everybody to realize who was what. So for instance, 26% of the respondents aren't voting taxpayers of, you know, the teachers that are from outside the district. So have an opinion, but not necessarily a vote. So I put that in there. I think the overwhelming position here, you see that 38% voted for the referendum, but also would vote for a new school. I think the more telling part is the part that 27% voted no, but would vote for a new school. And only, and that percentage isn't in there, but I believe that red is 6%, 6.2, which ended up being 4 people that wouldn't vote for it. Note the percentage isn't exactly right, because if you take out that 26% of the people that can't vote, it really comes out of 23 out of 48 actually voted no. So we're talking, you know, that upper 40%. But that, if you look at the next page, I kind of simplified some things and showed that, in effect, what happened here, based upon that survey, is of those things, there were 3 people that voted yes to the referendum that would lean towards no for a new school district, or for a new school building. And then the next page shows that there were 18 that were no's for the referendum, but would be yeses for a new school. So that was a very big difference on those 2 things. So, and, yeah.
Thanks for putting it together, by the way.
Yep.
Did you ask how many staff voted on the community survey that was put out in the spring?
Was that a question on here? No.
Okay. Did you ask how many staff voted in the November election on the referendum?
No, but you could figure that out based upon,
The ones not in the district?
yeah, I guess you couldn't 100% because 66 people responded. And you can tell which one, how many of them aren't able to vote.
Okay.
But I couldn't tell you because of those other people that didn't take the survey of this one, I couldn't tell you what percentage of them are non-Minnepoint residents.
Okay.
So I did reach out to a couple of people on that committee before I sent it out because I wanted to make sure that, again, I wasn't going against anything and making somebody upset, that kind of thing. And the 2 people that I talked to that were on that committee that presented to you guys both told me that their personal opinion was not for the referendum that passed, but for a new school. But they felt, based upon the survey that went out earlier, that that's what they needed to use, were directed to use as the information only to deliver the recommendation. So they had to deliver the recommendation based on that survey, not what they personally believed. So that's why, that's what they expressed to me.
Perfect, thank you. Anything else? Carla?
I would just like to share that I've heard multiple feedback from folks. They did not understand the referendum, you know, when we voted. They did not understand that what we proposed, what was proposed. That in looking back, a new school would be the way to go. Because of the cost, you know, when you think of the cost to redo the elementary school and to build a new school, you gotta compare, you know, what is the most economical, what is the best for the city, and what's the best for the students. And you gotta think about the pros and cons. I don't think people, if they could understand the pros and cons of each, that would be helpful. A lot of people need that bulleted out for them to understand. And I, you know, I apologize if that was done. I don't remember if it was or not. But you think about, if you built the new school, all the things that could marriage in that's already here, it may be a benefit. I don't know, I'm just saying it's something to consider.
Do those people you talked to attend any of the forums that Mitch held at the school explaining the referendum and what it would mean and what would be done and with the remodel? You know if they recall that at all?
I do not know, but I know I did.
Okay. And did you find that clarifying or more confusing after the information session?
The information that was given to me at the time, the way it was presented was fine. But then as we started to go down the road, I just felt there was a lack in more information to clarify. And I think that when we went to vote, I just wonder, there's something missing, because when you look at both sides and the logic of it, it's just my opinion, so.
Yeah, of course.
And what I've heard, I mean, all the opinions I've heard are, why are we doing this? Why aren't we going with a new school?
Thank you.
Carl, anybody else?
Yeah, I came about the referendum too. I didn't vote for the new edition. I didn't think it was needed. I didn't show up to any meetings because I didn't think there was any chance in heck that it would pass. But it did pass. It's surprising, and it's a good show of support from the community for education, which is great. But I think now that we know there is that much support, I mean, 2 years before I came on the school board, a referendum was shot down that caused programs to be removed from the school district, which kind of showed me the litmus test of this community is tough. But it did pass, and so maybe things are changing. But the fact that it did pass kind of, and I didn't vote for it, but if I had the option of looking at a new school or the renovation, I think I might lean towards a new school, but you know, all that, the facts aren't out, you know, the pros and cons, the benefits. I think it's something that needs to be discussed. It will cost more money, but renovating that old school, when we looked at renovation, you know, possibly putting air conditioning in, you know, the hallway ceilings, there's not enough room between the false ceiling and the structure for running ducts for air conditioning, that type of stuff. I mean, there's just, it's an old building, to retrofit it costs a little bit more money, but, and I see the benefit of keeping it there in the neighborhood. I see benefits of moving up here for the synergies of, you know, liaison officer, the nurse, maintenance, everything's up in one area, busing. So there's benefits that way too, but I think, to me, it seems like due diligence to kind of put it out there, you know, look at the pros and cons, let the people decide in a referendum which is better. I mean, we know that the district is ready, the people in the district are ready to do something with the elementary schools, so, you know, I'm fine with investing money into education too, but I guess I'd like to see that option to drill down further as what the advantages are of each and have that discussion. Maybe it'd end up being a renovation, but I don't think that's been explored fully, I guess.
Anybody else? Okay.
I'm gonna speak one more time if I can, because that's what I do, sorry. So to piggyback on what he said, and that's where this kind of came from, where I decided I think I needed to reach out. I realized as a teacher it's extremely difficult to put myself in a position where I'm not supporting the school, right? And I think that goes for all of us teachers, and when I say not supporting the school, I mean any sort of decision to speak for or, you know, or against what may be proposed by the board may come across as something that you're not supporting, and you're not supporting the school. So it was a fine line, and when some of you guys responded back to me to try to express that, to make sure that everybody knows that, and the survey proves that same thing, you know, that we are, whether you voted for the school referendum or not, as staff, we're extremely supportive of doing something, particularly the new school kind of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that it didn't look like, because if you look at the no's, they're yeses for the most part. On the other, they were actually delving into no for the renovating of that school, and I'm guessing particularly for the money. And the other thing I think the public needs to know moving forward, if you give them the opportunity to vote on a referendum, that it boils down to a little bit different than it did before. because now that ship has sailed on the on the referendum. And it appears it's a done deal. In voting for a new school, there's really two options on the table now. It's not if you're gonna do that, it's gonna be either we are gonna build a new school or we are gonna renovate the old one. It's not if you choose not to do the other one, well, we're not gonna do that too, and it's not a take-back scenario, which is a generational decision this community is making. It's not a short-sighted situation, so it's a really big thing that I think the community needs to take a big peek at.
I'd just like to ask a question. I'm fairly new back here, and we know that there was a referendum put out there for the school for this renovation or whatever. But how long did the board and the organization you were working with, as far as coming up with what your plan was, how long were you doing that? It seems like we're going backwards. I guess I'm surprised by this. I don't know why we're going backwards on this, because that should have been all the information that was gotten out there at the very beginning in the first place to make that decision. We are building or we're not building. And now I'm confused by why we're going backwards now. I don't get it. What's come up differently? Could you just explain to me, what's happened differently now?
Frankly, in my mind, if we're gonna spend $12 million down at the elementary, I personally would prefer to add another $3 or $4 million and build new. Because then we can solve some problems up here.
But why wasn't that discussed before?
Honestly, the board has never put their 2 cents in on this, honestly, if you really wanna know the truth. We dropped the ball, it's that simple.
All right.
There's no better way to say it.
Because
Well, that's the truth.
yeah, well, and I'm not saying this just out because I know what I'm talking about. We did something like this up at Chilton many years ago, and we had to make a decision what we were doing, and that's why I thought that when I saw how it was being presented, that you guys had done all this, and now I'm just sort of confused why this.
I think a more accurate statement is not that the board didn't discuss it. We discussed this many times over many meetings.
But we never did anything specific.
I think that some votes are being regretted on the language of the resolution.
Can I say
I
something?
think the main thing, Deb, is that there wasn't a choice on that referendum. We had 2 referenda. We had the recurring expenses and the 11.9 million. And maybe they should have put 11.9 million new school and made the referendum for April for the recurring. And I think people are concerned because they never had that chance to have that choice. If I had a kid in the elementary school and I would have one there, I would have voted yes, because I don't want them to go to school the way that school is now. I would want to remodel so they could go, but I didn't have that chance to build a new school.
If I'm not mistaken, I do not think we were allowed to do 2 projects side by side. We could do a capital.
2 questions.
Well, I think
2 questions.
only if it was a capital and an operational.
No, you can have 2 building
You have
questions.
2 total questions, that's what we had.
Okay.
The 350,000 was
Correct.
one, the building was the other. And Tony's correct, had we done the 350 first, we could have then done the 2 at the next one, or we could have done 2 building ones and held off on the 350. Again, I think we dropped the ball.
I'd have to double
It's a matter of
check.
how to put it all together. Got it. All right.
Jeff, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
And working at Land's End and dealing with big budgets and stuff, not everything goes right. And sometimes you have to take a step back and say, okay, you know what? It didn't work out the way we wanted to. And I truly, truly feel that there's more research to be done, and we want to make the right decision. And it's okay to say, hey, we need to take a step back, bring forth more information, and do it.
I think you're absolutely right, Carla, because, you can have committee after committee, and meetings after meetings, and there are people that aren't gonna go. They're not gonna go there, they can't go, or they don't wanna, but then when a decision's made, then people come and say, hey, that's the wrong decision.
I agree.
No, you know what I mean? That's what happens.
Exactly.
And so that's, I think, kind of, not that they're saying no, it was the wrong decision, but well, maybe we should have had more input in it, and we didn't.
Was there focus groups?
Yeah.
Was there? Okay.
But again, people don't, you know,
There was a planning committee,
yeah,
as far as a focus group. like-
there were actual
I
focus
don't
groups.
think there was.
No.
You might
I
want
would
to
have a
consider
hard
that.
time not calling the 2-day charrette.
I thought there was a focus group.
There was a 2-day design workshop where the public was invited to review all schematic designs,
Right.
including new school designs.
Right, I attended that.
And so people said yay or nay, and gave comments, and
That constitutes as a
focus group.
focus group.
Mhm.
Sorry. This discussion, it's unfortunate that this discussion didn't take place before.
Well, I understand.
the Labor meeting.
Been there.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right, sometimes you have to take a step back.
You do, and do
I'm
what's
willing,
right.
it could get a little complicated with what the board is trying to do, but I'm willing to take that.
And I think sometimes you feel better by taking a step back and digesting everything
Right.
and looking at
One of the gentlemen said that this is a generational decision,
it.
and we want to make sure that it's the right one.
I agree.
There's got to be more comments. Mike?
Does the board ever really think that we're going to spend $11.92 million in the school? A lot of us have done remodeling. Will we even be able to hit that budget, or are we going to be over? I mean, every time we get into remodeling, no matter if it's a building or house or whatever it is, you always run over budget. You find this that you didn't expect, and you know, if you start new, we shouldn't have that. We should be able to hit that budget. You know, we might spend another $1, $2, $3 million that we don't expect on spending. I mean, I think we need to use a little common sense here.
That's why you do a thorough examination of it all.
Yeah, but you could do that too, and you still find stuff.
I know, but then you have the contingencies.
See how you pay for those contingencies.
No,
I mean, just,
but you're figuring that in the budget then,
right.
is what I'm saying. Okay, we have this, we're gonna figure, maybe this contingency may come up, where we have this, so you have your slush fund.
But that would be beyond the 11.9.
Correct, but that's what you may end up having to look at, that's why you gotta look at everything thoroughly.
Okay, we're getting
and say,
sidetracked a little bit.
look at.
Does anybody else have a comment? We have a long agenda. Jude?
Did you include any outside advice or counsel or recommendations? Then there must be people who specialize in school planning and resource development, and et cetera. Did we buy anything like that and use that in the prior decision? You did?
Yeah.
Or design.
Well, an architect, right, but I
But
just
nobody
mean
else besides the architect.
school facility planning, yeah. There might be something there as a resource.
I think we spent $65,000 on outside help, wasn't it?
With that page.
That page, 65,000.
Was there any other outside help, though? I don't think there was.
No, just that page.
There was no other outside help.
Okay,
Well, not on that, no, on other projects.
With
This percentage. Not on that one.
does anybody else have any other comment?
Jeff, do you think it'd be appropriate to take a straw poll of just the people in attendance, including the board?
No.
You don't think so?
We had an election in November, over 1,100 voted yes. And a straw poll is not gonna sway my decision on this.
It might help me.
Okay.
Diane, with your permission.
Everyone invited?
Anybody in attendance, you don't have to, but anybody that would support the research and the board looking into the idea of building a new school instead of the remodel, just raise your hand if you like.
Okay, thank you everybody for your comments. We will be discussing it more later in the agenda. Items for action, we're going to move up number 4 to be number 1. District recommends approval of Mitch Wainwright to a 1 full-time superintendent position.
So moved.
No, I think if we're gonna have a discussion on this issue, we need to do it in closed session if we're gonna talk about performance of an administrator.
We're not discussing performance,
Talk about hiring.
we're just talking about making him.
Okay, so you take into account performance, we need to make a decision to
Yeah,
hire.
I do.
Okay, can we discuss it and,
I don't think there's, I mean, for me, there's no issue in performance.
We have a
but not allowing any
Well,
board
if you
member
wanna,
to express any concerns
okay.
is
Yes, I
suppression
understand.
of board input on a decision. So
Okay, but
we
we
need to be
decided,
very careful.
we decided the last meeting we were gonna put this on the agenda.
That's fine, but I think we need to go to closed session if we want to discuss this in real terms. We don't have to do it right now.
You're right.
Well, then we should, but can we do a closed? We can't do a closed
Closed
session.
session was not on the agenda.
No, that's what I mean. We agreed to put this on the agenda last time we were here. Nobody said anything about a closed session.
But it's my apologies. I mean, I thought we could go in, I thought we could make a motion to go into closed session without announcing it, so that's my fault.
So we have a motion. Anybody want a second?
I'll second it, but I think we want to clarify the language of the motion.
Okay.
It's your motion, but I don't.
It's just basically what that said. What Jeff said.
Okay.
So just to clarify that, Tony, the contract will stay as is for this school year. And the
Well, I
personnel.
thought we were just gonna make the decision, we're gonna hire him, then we would decide what his contract would be, right? No, we just hire them first and then decide what his contract
That's
is.
Technically,
why
he's under contract for the
Right.
present year.
Right.
So we would be removing the interim for 1920, subject to
Well, okay,
contract negotiation.
if you want me to re-motion.
I just want to clarify that.
Okay, I recommend that we
language.
hire Mitch as a full-time superintendent, as is with his contract until the end of his contract this year, 2019, I guess it would be. They can be renegotiated in the spring.
So how is that different than the current status?
Because he's not gonna be a principal. He's a full-time superintendent.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that
Then that's
you're
next hurdle
suggesting
we'll
that we remove principal duties and that would start a search for
A principal.
a new high school principal immediately?
Yes.
I'm going to remove my second to that.
Okay. So does anybody else want to second that?
Hey, I want to get this settled as well, and I don't necessarily, it's not that I have major concerns, but I just think in terms of just doing this the right way, I think if any board member has concerns about moving forward with this decision, they should have a right to express that, without, putting Mitch's reputation publicly at risk in front of the public and open, and in an open meeting. I just don't think it's right.
Let's back up to the personnel committee. The intent of that was to announce that they were not going to do a search.
Well, right, and that was when the motion was made that we do not do a search for 10,000, that we look at hiring Mitch as a full-time superintendent. That's what was stated there.
All right.
That's why this came on the agenda for this meeting.
All right.
Taking the interim off his title.
All right.
And I think we were gonna put somebody in a 6-12 position, but make somebody a 6-12 principal
Not this year.
that we have already on staff, right? No, I mean, no contract, no raise or anything, we just make somebody 6-12. You have to have somebody a nice principal.
I think that was more about 1920.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do that mid.
But then who's gonna be the 9-12 principal?
That would fall onto the new superintendent to give us recommendations.
Because to me, he's contracted for this year.
He is.
Correct.
So I would support a motion that removes interim pending contract negotiations for 1920.
Okay, you want to make that a motion?
I'll make that motion that we
I'll second that.
remove interim
Okay.
on Mitch pending contract negotiations for 1920.
We have a motion and we have a second.
So
You
Mitch
wanna
is, Mitch is
read
still
that one more
principal
time?
for this year then?
Right.
That's good.
This year's
And still-
contract would
We're still, we're going off of the contract that we have with
The
him
current
currently.
contract
the
would
current
stay in
contract,
place.
All right, which reads interim superintendent.
And the dual duties, he's got superintendent and principal duties.
So everything's gonna stay the same, so really he can't move unless we have to redo that contract and then we have it with him currently if we wanna remove the interim.
Effective 1920.
That's what he said.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
It would
Stay
be
status
effective
quo,
of,
other than
it's basically
income's coming
extending
off.
our intent to offer him a contract for superintendent without an interim tag for 1920, so then we could begin negotiating.
Speak up, can't hear you guys up there.
Sorry.
Especially
I was stating that the intent would be to remove the interim tag for 1920, which would allow us to start contract negotiations for that in lieu of a search.
Okay, so can you restate that motion?
Angie, can you restate that, please?
I have to remove the interim tag and proceed with contract negotiations for the 2019-20 school year.
Is that what you meant, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
So, okay.
Second, still goes with second, yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
and to be clear, if Mitch and the board, they don't come together on the contract, then the board needs to do something else.
Yeah, just look like that, but yeah.
Yeah, everybody's clear.
Does this take care of your questions on the performance? Or the discussion of,
I
because
get,
we
I
kind
get
of,
the energy here, I mean, I
Yeah.
get it, it just doesn't feel right, that, I don't feel like we're changing anything, you know, I mean, he's gonna be with us till the end of the year and we're gonna renegotiate, so I'm just a little confused, but I think Larry's helping clarify things a little bit. I think anytime, you know, you have a current employee, you're discussing whether to extend the contract or hire them further, they have a right to a closed session to have a reasonable discussion. You know, pros and cons of their performance. You know, we haven't really even reviewed how things have gone to this date, you know, in a real way, you know. We haven't filled out any evaluation questions, you know. I mean, I know everyone I know that there haven't been any major concerns that have been brought up to me, and again, I know where this is headed, you know, I don't mean like that, I mean, there's a lot of positive energy.
I think it just
To
removes
support this.
the interim titles, all it's doing. It saves the things you're talking about, the evaluation of performance, to the following contract year. I think it just removes the title interim, that's all it's really doing. You'll be under the current contract is saying, doing the same things. And it also sort of shows, it's like a letter of intent, that we are interested in you as the job goes, and we'll have to do the evaluation prior to that new contract. We'll get a chance to go through all that, I would feel,
Oh, yeah.
prior to, am I wrong?
No, February, March.
Yeah. So to me, it doesn't remove the barrier to that review, which I think is important too.
Okay, all right. All right, my preference would be do a review, meet, go over the review, and then make a decision on whether we feel like this is our best long-term candidate, and whether we want to go through a search or not. And I think that's the most appropriate way to go, and again, I apologize that this was on the agenda. I was fully prepared to discuss it myself, I just thought we would go in a closed session to do it. And I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Any other comments?
We will have that opportunity, Doc.
Okay, so this is kind of just a vote of confidence to date, essentially. Is that how you
I would
view
agree.
it?
That's what I would interpret.
So then, if I understand this correctly, you'd be the superintendent, and then he will assign someone 6-12 duties?
No, he's still.
Or 9-12 duties?
No, under his current
Going to
contract, he does
continue
principal
those.
duties.
Well,
also.
then that's not what we talked
But-
about.
I think that as superintendent, then he needs to come to us and give us a proposal as to what he wants to do, because there's so many things that we have to get done in the next 3 to 5 months. And that's not even counting the school building. And I think he's gonna need to try to free up his time, but we're gonna have to find the funding to be able to do that.
So then what's the difference of what he's doing now?
Exactly.
I mean,
So Tony has a real motion. Tony's motion is remove all high school principal duties from Mitch and find someone else to do them for the rest of the year. And I guess we can discuss that, we can discuss that.
Unless the
That's a
intent
real
of my motion
change.
is mistaken, my motion was real in that a yes vote would be
well,
saying
we actually
we
have
are.
2 motions on the table, which we can't really have. We have one
No, he
motion.
withdrew his
He
second,
withdrew his
yours
second, so
died.
yours died.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He withdrew it, yours died, sorry.
Okay. Well, I just don't understand what to do. So we remove the interim tag?
And show intent to
But he's
offer
still
a
doing all the,
contract.
he's still doing all the other, I mean, I don't think it's fair to evaluate him on a superintendency position when he's doing a 9/12 principal position. I made that very clear.
I don't dispute that, but that's the contract he's under currently. My intent would be to move forward showing our intent is to hire him as full-time superintendent and not start a search, not having a search process, which would be the other option.
So a motion to that effect would be in order.
You did it already.
You get up, Jeff.
And we're gonna vote on it,
All right.
unless you have something else to say.
I'm still, I just want everybody to be clear, on the present contract, naming Mitch as interim, is that contract going to get changed to remove that title in that contract? If it does, it has to come back to the board. Because
The
Dr.
present contract will eliminate interim if this passes. And it will just be.
Well, then does he have a contract?
That's not,
Because if it's
That's
listed
not-
as an interim contract.
my motion
with
is for the 1920 school year.
Okay,
Right.
sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay, I'm still.
It's to keep the current, my motion is to keep the current contract in place.
Gotcha.
Okay.
State we are hiring Mitch as superintendent once
Okay.
a contract,
Got it.
superintendent only. Once a contract.
Don't feel bad.
I
Tony.
finally got
I
it.
got it too. Okay, so,
So essentially, we are not doing a search. That's what this vote is about.
Basically, you're right.
Right.
okay.
We kind of decided that.
Call the question, please.
Okay, so we're removing the interim tag
Yeah.
and proceed with contract negotiations for the 2019-20 school year.
Yeah, and maybe it should say to remove the interim tag effective 1920. Somewhere here. Which the contract would be clear as well, but just.
Okay.
Then your concern is right back in there.
Reevaluation will come
Yeah.
in a couple of months.
Understand.
Okay. Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Yes.
Basting.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to early renewal of backup system, Untitled Solutions.
If you want.
Air conditioning.
Where's Roger?
Joe Rusky is Dependable Solutions. He is one of the co-owners of Dependable Solutions.
Quiet, please.
He'd sent me an email saying our contract, how we provide our backup services to our server and all of our data runs out in April. And he'd given me two proposals. One was to stay with our current system. It runs out in April, and then we renew at that point in time. There would be a one-time cost of $3,499 plus $6,500 for the warranty and back up to cloud. So 1 year total in April would be $10,000, a little bit over $10,000. He said option 2 is to upgrade now. There is a deal going on. We would save on the hardware and the yearly cost. So the first year under option 1 was a $10,000 cost. The first year under the early renewal is a $7,300 cost. And option 1, a yearly renewal would be $6,500. Under option 2, if we go early, our renewal would be $5,028. So over a 3-year window of time, if we renew early, it would be almost a $6,000 savings over the course of those 3 years, or about a $2,000 savings per year. So because it is over the $5,000 limit, I would need approval, and I would recommend that we do the early renewal and get the best price for the district possible.
I've got a question for you.
Yep.
The elementary school is connected by the internet, correct?
Correct.
So they take care of that too? Does Dependable take care of the elementary school?
Yes.
Would there be a cost savings, I'm just asked as a general question, if that building was up here with the internet, Dependable, whatever?
What we've looked at doing a couple of times, and Jeff and Larry can speak this, probably even Andy too, they talked about trying to get what's called dark fiber from this location down to the elementary school. Part of the cost would be, do they have to go underground the whole way? Can they tap onto power poles? And I know Larry Dolphin, you were here when they had some of those conversations, and how you'd said the poles were filled, so really trying to jump and go up and down. The cost to try to get a more reliable, faster internet connection between this building and the elementary building will be costly. And if it were on this campus, obviously the only cost would be to bury the fiber under the ground to that building. We don't have to worry about going through anybody else's property. We don't have to try to get on power poles anywhere else in the building or in the city to get that from here to there. So my long answer to a short, it would be a cost savings to try to get a reliable, higher speed internet to the elementary school.
And there is an annual fee that we pay, and it's a substantial fee.
Is it have the elementary on it?
Yes, the wireless signal.
It's also going to be really costly to get it from here over to the elementary. I mean, they were talking.
Well, I'm going to take a stab at it, $500,000.
It was, yeah, that was the figure that I was.
Annually?
No,
just
okay, one time, but still, that's pretty steep money.
And this location actually gets internet service up off the highway. They buried the cable, and we get fiber.
So you have a T1 line, you've got the...
Yeah.
And we installed that within the last 5 years.
Yeah. So basically, it would be tapping onto what we have and sending it to the next location.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we, is it option 2?
Option 2 through
Option 2, I move that we go with option 2.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Jeff, we were going to have Dependable Solutions come in and give us a presentation on exactly what they do provide for us.
I have it on their radar, and I will try to get them to schedule
Is
a
this
board
time
meeting.
sensitive, Mitch, that we need to pass this month?
Yes, this component, the deal runs out in December.
It does, okay.
Yeah. So if we wait till the January meeting, then we're stuck with a more costly expense.
And this is, the option 2 is just an annual contract?
It is a one-time fee for the hardware, and the first year's subscription would be $7,000. After that, the next 2 years, it would be a $5,000 commitment the next 2 years.
Right. But if we wanted to do something different in a year, we're not locked into
No.
a multi-year contract? Okay.
No.
That's all.
Okay, let's call a question, please.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Baskin.
Yes. Okay. School start date waiver, we need to do this no matter what we decide, so. Have to notify the public that there is a chance that we're gonna be starting the school year 2019-20 early.
So with moving forward on a remodel and addition at the elementary school, the recommendation was that we start the 19-20 school year earlier, so that in the summer of 2020, whatever construction company was there, they would have the largest window of free space, free time to work on construction projects. Potential was they would do the addition first, get the walls up, and they could work on there year-round, and then when they have to move into the building and do some of the remodeling and the work in there, they would need as much summertime as possible. So I sent an email out to anybody that had been on a school district calendar committee, and we met last Wednesday to discuss this potential. And what you see before you is the proposed recommendation for the 19-20 school year. Basically, we're trying to end school at Memorial Day weekend. Graduation would remain the same. All high school and middle school students would be done on May 22nd. It was suggested that elementary students be done on May 21st. And when it comes to state requirements, there are hours of instruction that you have to have. The unfortunate thing for elementary and middle school students is that if they're running buses for high school students, they're running buses for everybody, so they have the same number of minutes and hours of instruction that we have in the high school. That is well past their required number of hours of instruction. And because this would be the summer of 2020 would be the summer that there would be the most work done inside the building. It would allow at least one day for teachers to kind of pack up their rooms, and they would still be here as a work day on the 22nd, but they wouldn't have any students that day, and they'd be able to start doing those kind of preparations for that potential work that summer. So we took out 4 days after May, and then the current contract that had been proposed had coming back to school on Monday, December 23rd. And I don't know if anybody has been in a classroom the day before Christmas vacation, but I can guarantee no matter how hard the teachers try, there will be no education taking place, and it will be organized chaos. So by taking off the 23rd of December and putting it on that Monday, we actually just moved 5 days prior to Labor Day weekend. So we would come in for a full week of school that particular week.
Couple questions.
Yep.
I know there was some discussion about moving the date of the fair, but that's not going to be for this coming fall, correct?
Correct. It would be potentially the following fall.
So the fair will still be Labor Day weekend, correct? Okay. So have you considered, concerns about how many kids are going to be preparing for the fair? They usually, ag parents, 4-H parents are getting their animals ready and getting their projects ready, a good 3 days ahead of time. And they didn't have any school at that point, and now they're going to be running into being in school. Has that been considered, or a lot of them were asking about excused absences, unexcused absences, perfect attendance. Is there a way to maybe sort that out?
It has been an issue in the past. The previous year, we didn't start before Labor Day weekend because of where September 1st fell, but there have been school years where September 1 falls, and Labor Day is late. Labor Day might be like the 6th or 7th, and we have come to school on a couple of days, and I would say the same thing for the 19-20 school year that I've said all along. We would never tell students you can't go to the fair. We would never tell parents you're not allowed to excuse your students. That is a great learning opportunity. A lot of students and some people that have more expertise at this than I can speak to this, but I think they move their animals in on Wednesday night, Wednesday afternoon, and most of the showing is on Thursday for a lot of our students.
Usually Thursday night, Thursday after school. Friday's usually a big day. And 2 years ago, Mitch is right, it really wasn't that big of an issue. And it was surprising how many kids were actually in school that had animals at the fair.
Okay.
And staff, we all know it, you know, that this wouldn't be a surprise to any staff member to think, yep, I'm gonna have a handful of students that maybe aren't in class because they're at the fair, and the staff just make the allowances for that to happen, and, you know, we wish them well.
Okay.
I've always been a supporter of starting school before Labor Day.
Sure.
2 weeks earlier.
Sure, I don't disagree, I just want to make sure that, you know,
We just basically need a motion to approve that.
I want to get a sense of how serious this obligation is for kids and whether expecting them to go to school is, on top of it, is unreasonable. But you feel like it's, number one, it could be an excused absence, and number two, it's probably doable for most of these kids. Okay.
I would say yes.
Probably the biggest complaint I've heard is that some of the boys miss out on football practice, and so they can't play in the initial scrimmages because they're missing time because they're at fair. I've heard that from more than one.
That would be more likely the
That's
state
the
fair.
That's right, state fair, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You're
that's,
entirely right.
that's a WIA requirement,
Yeah.
because you have to have so many days
That's right,
with
yes.
pads.
Yeah.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to accept the calendar?
Do we have to act on this today?
The DPI has a requirement that you have your waiver to them by the 1st of January.
Oh, I
Now,
see.
the person that I was in contact with said that's not necessarily set in stone,
Oh,
but I need to have something, and I have to have a calendar to share with them once it is approved to show them, here's when we're gonna start. There's only 4 reasons why you can ask for a waiver, and a building project is the one that gets granted 100% of the time, and it's the one that's asked for the majority of the time.
So, that's a good question. So, number one, if we submit the waiver and get it approved, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to start school on this date?
That would, yes, that would be my understanding. So
Okay.
if the referendum question goes a different direction, we would revert back to the already agreed upon school calendar that would start, in this case, it would start on September 3rd. And
So
we
we're
would revert back to all those other options.
We are operating on a 2-year calendar.
Yeah, and this is year 2 of a 2-year calendar.
That's right.
mhm. I'll make a motion to accept this calendar.
Second.
Any other discussion?
You have a question in the back.
Mike?
Yeah, there are.
If you're gonna build a new school, this calendar, you won't even have to start school early, because that'll be on a total new site, and won't affect any school days or.
Right.
That is correct.
Going forward, so.
Right, so, I mean, they would approve this waiver contingent on the fact that we are gonna be starting a building project.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, if we do not start a building project, if we don't have a building project that impacts the elementary school, that would make us null and void, and we wouldn't need the waiver.
Okay, let's call a question, please.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Basting.
Yes. School safety plan.
Okay. As a result of the safety grant that the school district had, there are certain things that we have to have done and in place by January 1st. And one of the things is for you to have an opportunity to review the school district safety plan. This is the plan we've had in place for several years, and it gets updated with new staff information, names, numbers, contacts. But it is the plan that we basically have been following now for several years. Excuse me. One of the things that needs to take place is an opportunity that you have a chance to review it, that it is included in the minutes of the board meeting, that you have reviewed it. We have to execute a type of safety drill on or before January 1st each year moving forward. That's the newest law passed by the state of Wisconsin. Act 143, I believe, is the correct numbers for that. So we have a copy of our safety plan. I need to notify them of when we did an annual school violence drill, and the answer to that is on November 29th. Both locations conducted that drill. We have a written evaluation of that drill. the elementary school. I can give you a synopsis. Approximately 50 staff and 360 students. At 9:10, we began by announcing a soft or modified lockdown over the PA system. Explained it was only a drill. A few minutes later, they moved to what was called a hard lockdown, and that's where students were expected to move out of sight. Teachers turn off the window, or turn off the lights, close windows, get students out of any line of sight into the building. The drill ended at 9:25. Students and teachers returned to their regular class schedule. Feedback was provided to staff, making sure windows next to doors were covered. Reminder that everyone and anyone who has the opportunity should be calling 911. A couple years ago, we did a surprise lockdown in this building, and we had Officer Ottaway notify the dispatch that they will be getting calls so that they have a sense of what's going to happen. And we found out that sometimes that 911 call goes to Dodgeville, other times it gets kicked to a different dispatch center because they can only handle so many calls coming in at one time. On the same date, in the middle school, high school, we have approximately 55 staff members and 365 students that participated. We did ours a little bit later in the day, 12:38. This is a lockdown drill. Students were told about the upcoming drill and reminder procedures. They were told it was a drill only. We had Officer Ottaway and Chief Wire in the building to participate in observing, giving us feedback. By 12:45, the drill had ended. Students went back to their normal schedule. We had an opportunity to meet. What did we notice? And we've shared out with staff members some feedback about students remaining silent, make sure they're out of the view of the window, and reminded to call 911 in the event of a real situation. One of the things we have to do is, what is the most recent school safety plan training? We did that back in September 12th. There were 66 staff members here, and it was kind of round one. We talked about this at our safety committee meeting. That was that first training that they had spoken about. And when was a local law enforcement agency there to conduct an on-site assessment? It was on the 29th. We had the benefit of having Bill on staff so he could go between two buildings, and we had Chief Wire here as well. So we're covering all of the information necessary for me to send to the DOJ by January 1st. So I would need you to give me approval to go ahead and send this off to the Department of Justice.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? Question, Angie, please.
Stefas,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Stahl,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Bassie.
Yes.
And the law requires us to do this annually before January 1st of each year.
Okay, let's move on into business services, credit card, and approval of bills payable.
Can we get, can we just dovetail into the safety committee update from that?
Matt's here, I'd ask him to speak to that at his reporting time, but if you want to talk now, you
Okay.
certainly could.
It's okay with the board. I think it's relevant to the response plan that was just passed. I mean, we could ask him just specifically to speak to that, would that be okay, Jeff?
Sure. We had our annual or semi-annual district safety committee meeting, which comprised of staff, parents, community members. We even had a student part of it. And the first part was just confirming where we were at in our previous goals, more related to security and physical safety. We felt like we've met or are close to meeting every one of the 5 goals. So that was the front entrance, classroom security, training. We're not there yet, but we've made quite a bit of growth there. We also talked about a lot about just the training itself. We had someone from Iowa County, Keith Holbert, And he spoke a lot about, you've done the drills, and maybe now's the time to go into a full exercise, where you're doing like a tabletop discussion around a scenario. We do a practice, and then we do an actual full drill from beginning to end, incorporating emergency services from Iowa County. So I think the group felt that would be the next step. So we're gonna, I believe we're gonna reach out to Keith and use the local services. So there was also brought up looking more at social emotional safety for kids. And we've got some things in place, but we know we've got some work there to do. The high school student was very helpful in giving her feedback on her perception. And so I thought it was a meeting that was well done and come a long way, but we have ways to go. And then finally, Bill Ottaway introduced the mechanism for the door locks so they don't stay. Bill, you want to explain it real quick? It's just a push pin that you just...
I don't want to say anything on the camera.
Oh, sure. Oh, sorry, you're right. Thank you. Forgot about that. And, but anyway, there's something being built in-house, and we think we'll have those installed sooner rather than later. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on into credit card and approval of the bills.
I'll make a motion, we approve as approved. Yeah.
Would you like to second that?
I'll second.
Questions?
In Focus, is that just a different smart board?
Yes.
Is that a different?
Yeah, in Focus, some classrooms basically, it's almost like just like a large screen TV, they don't have the projector.
Okay.
So that's a different brand for that smart board.
Same idea.
Yep, same idea, has some touchscreen capabilities and some things that go with it. Less bulbs to burn out.
Nice.
Yep.
I had a question on the motor for the dust collector. We had discussed it, and I understand that it was ruined, but is there any more discussion on that as far as, are we gonna reimburse from that, for that, being, do we know?
The company that installed the dust collector came, actually took out one of the components that has the turn paddles in it, taking it back, basically stating that that's under warranty, so that they're going to do their work under warranty. It will still be a little bit of a battle between the electrician and the company to determine who was at fault and that allowed the water to get, they're saying the water came down the conduit and into the motor.
But there's a chance we'll probably be reimbursed for that.
Correct.
I was
Yes.
just curious on that.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? Question, please.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas.
Yes.
Basting.
Abstain. Okay. Approval of the minutes. Make a motion for that.
There you go.
There's several minutes.
Yeah.
6, 7.
Do all. Yeah. Too many meetings. Okay, somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved. One fell asleep.
After you're done.
I'll make that motion.
Dr. Dunn beat you to
Oh, he
it,
did,
so-
sorry, second.
Okay.
Wouldn't pay attention.
Any other comments or questions on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Superintendent's report.
Just a reminder, we are in the month for anybody that is an incumbent. December 21st is the deadline for filing your non-candidacy paperwork. So this actually includes Tony as well. So it'd be Larry, Andy, and Tony, if you're deciding not to run for election, December 21st is the deadline for that paperwork. For anyone else interested in running, and for the incumbents, if you're interested in running, January 2nd is the deadline for filling out paperwork to run for election. And Tony, if you're interested in running, you would have to fill out the paperwork. You just come in and adjust your current to an amended paperwork. So anybody in the audience interested in running for the school board, January 2nd is your deadline.
And will this go the same way that it did like 20 years ago? The top 2 vote getters will get 3-year terms?
Correct. Yeah, there's 2 3-year seats available, and the third seat is a 1-year term. It would fill out the remainder of the vacated seat.
Okay.
The school office will be open on January 2nd?
Yes.
We're in school.
We're in school?
5 p.m. is you have to be here till 5 p.m. that day.
Thank you.
So I'll turn it over, building level administrators. Matt, do you want to update anything from the elementary school?
Yeah, like I said, I hope that YouTube link worked. It's a channel, so the second graders, this is Frankie's class is continuing to add book reviews to that channel, and that's how this is up and on. So I just brought another project with Mrs. Alpana, and the 5th graders, they were Skyping or video conferencing with an author. It's the Mock Newberry Club. So the kids are reading books that are highly regarded for this year. The Newberry is an award for the top children's book. And so they Skyped with the author about that work, about their reading. And, I know several classes have done that, where they video chat with an author or anyone who's an expert in their field. And it's just a very motivating type of work. And just wanted to highlight some of the, when you think librarian here, I think, shuffling books and checking in and out, but the librarian is so much more than that. And I know she's also brought in our 4K kids into the library, so now they're checking out books, which is interesting. But it's great just to get those kids, hit the ground running with literacy. So we're real happy to have Vicki working with the teachers.
Vicki?
Oh, let's see. Okay, robotics club has started up, and it's off to a great start. Also, what they've been working on is building a robot using the EV3 Lego Mindstorms. So there's a couple advisors along with our students, and they just seem to really be having a great time. Also, our student council, they participated in a leadership conference at CISA 3. They worked on team building, trust building, communication activities. And for the building exercise, team building, together they had to work on multiple puzzles that were very challenging. The presenter at this leadership conference actually pointed out to the whole group, there were other schools involved besides Mineral Point, that how he was impressed at how our high school students greeted students at the buildings in the morning. And he said there's nothing better to connect with all the students when you have student leaders who are willing to do that. So I think all of us in the district has realized just how important that is to have our students be a part of that. And Mrs. Kloss is our student council advisor, so she has the students very active. Maker Club is another activity available to middle school students. Mrs. Brown and Mrs. McCoy are the advisors. The turnout this year has been overwhelming, and it's a design and activity club. They do some engineering, they do crafting activities. Some of the activities which they participated in so far was a hazmat challenge, which I stayed far away from that. And breakout activities, they try to solve clues to the history of Thanksgiving, and building a ship that could hold as many pennies as possible and still float on the ocean. Now obviously we didn't have an ocean in the library, but they had tubs of water to see if their experiment would work. And the latest activities, they're building tinker sets and learning how to use pulleys. So, on Wednesday, December 5th, Lita Pold from Triple P Express presented the middle school with a $500 check from ExxonMobil for their 2018 Educator Alliance School Grant Award. The money will be used by our math and science departments, so a big thank you to Triple P and also to Mr. Wainwright for nominating MPMS for this grant. Tried to get Lita in the picture when we took it, but she didn't want anything to do with it. She ran out the door, literally ran out the door. Also, congratulations to Mackenzie Brown, one of our 6th grade teachers who has been nominated for the Cole Teacher Fellowship Award. This award recognizes and supports teaching excellence and innovation, so best of luck to Mackenzie.
Angela?
So I wanted to focus this month a little bit. We've been doing a lot of social emotional learning work with our staff to benefit our students. So we had, I think 2 or 3 of you did a trip to New Glarus to do some mindfulness work with their school staff so that we could bring back some more ideas to better support our students. This year, since September started, we've written 6 behavior intervention plans, 5 other student plans, conducted 5 functional behavioral assessments. We implemented a student support team that meets bi-weekly at the elementary school, so we're constantly talking about and reviewing students who are struggling. And then there's multi-tiered systems of support teams available once a month at both schools that Caitlin leads to kind of build background knowledge and how we want to push our work forward at both buildings to help students who are struggling with some social emotional support. So I think some good work has been done so far.
And at the high school level, I'll echo McKenna Reichling had mentioned there is a high school dance coming up on the 15th. That suggestion came to me from the student council, and I've been trying to push more things in that direction to let them have a voice in what's going on. So we have an in-house DJ that will actually be doing the music for them, and it's a combination between the yearbook and FBLA kind of sponsoring the dance coming up on this Saturday. And then on the 19th of December, the juniors will be taking their practice ACT exam. So we will run them through the paces. It'll be the full-blown 60 math questions in 60 minutes. You have 45 minutes to do this test. They'll get a true practice ACT experience. We'll put them in the auxiliary gym and give them the sense of what that's like. It's hard to tell people to be prepared for a 4-hour exam and not know what that's like. So we do that. We have in-house experts that score that, get the information back to the kids, and that's kind of their pre-score. They're going through the boot camp. We're using several tools that we have in place now to help improve those scores. And then in February, they will be taking the actual statewide ACT exam. So we've had a lot of kids say, thank you for doing this, thank you for giving us this opportunity to know what it's like to take the exam for the very first time. And for us, we've been very fortunate, and I think for the kids and the parents, because the state pays this one, a lot of kids get the score that they need and or want and don't ever have to pay for them out of their own pocket to take the ACT exam. We have had a pretty standard rate of return of at least 2 points gained on the pre-score to the post-score based on the boot camp. And a lot of professionals that want to sell school districts something say, well, we can get you that 2 to 3 point increase. And I'm thinking, well, I've got great staff members here that get that same 2 point increase. I don't have to pay them anything extra. No, they're doing a great job, you know, and they help the kids be extremely successful. Last year, they will all hang their hat on one student with a 6 point increase from the pre-test to the actual ACT score. So they do great work. They deserve all the credit. So that's coming up on the 19th of December. That gives us time to score and then get the boot camp and hit the ground running. So that's from the high school.
I just want to say thanks to McKenna and the student council and Mrs. Staver for having a conversation about the incident that happened in Baraboo, and having a really well thought out proposal to help the student body deal with that. You know, I know that you had sent out an email after the incident happened that said, you know, we have a really positive culture here. I can't imagine that happening here, and I totally agree. But all the more reason that a student body that maybe is, you know, extremely compassionate and caring and empathetic would be leaders on sensitivity and social awareness. So I really like this. So congrats to them. And then back on her presentation, she expressed some concerns about storage. As high school principal, were you aware of those issues, and is there kind of a plan or?
Since day one when I was a high school principal, I was aware of the concern.
Okay.
And I can't say that I don't share the same concerns that they have. We have portable bleachers that are used back behind the school for JV softball games, and then they get brought into the school because when we host a wrestling tournament, we need extra seating, and that fills in there. If we host a basketball tournament game, a lot of times we use those. So there's no good place to store them that keeps them out of the weather, so they end up staying in the hallways. And sometimes the scorers tables that get used for either a wrestling match or a basketball match stay in the hallways because we don't have good places to store them.
Do we need some kind of assessment of our space needs and issues, and see what kind of
We've had that for years.
storage addition would be needed?
It's always been budgetary constraints.
Correct. The home ec room is kind of a multi-purpose. We have some counseling services that an agency out of Platteville provides. They are now set up in the home ec room. They were on the stage last year, but we needed to move them because when it's the National Honor Society induction ceremony and the FFA and a couple other things that happen, they use the stage so that their stuff needs to move. So we suggested part of the home ec room and set them up in there, and they think that's a much better space, allows for more convenient in and out of students without a lot of people knowing somebody's going in to talk to a counselor for some reason. We have some storage issues for some of the maintenance supply things that we order, because if we can order it in bulk, then we get a better price, but then when bulk shows up, you have to have a place to store it. So, I mean, we certainly could bring somebody in to look at some of the space needs, but I would agree to Jeff that we've had people come in the past and look at what we have, and you know, we have stuff, and stuff is big stuff that's here. It makes it tough to store it.
Okay, so just to be clear, I mean, so the space needs have been assessed. There's been a recommendation to improve storage with a price quote, and it's been discussed at a board level?
I've never had a price quote given to me. One of the suggestions was to add on, there is a storage building on the northwest side of the building back there that Roger uses for a lot of things, and the thought was to add on to that location. I can ask for him to get a price quote as to what it would be to add 1, 2, 3 bays onto there, what it would be. It would be an addition of basically just a steel building to that. I can certainly do that.
I thought they were supposed to be looking at doing some storage when they did something with the dock area.
One of the things talking about this for trying to secure the building,
yeah,
and connecting the high school, the current high school, to the ag building, there was a proposal for a walkway and some additional storage in that addition.
And we did have a figure, but it was pretty high, as I recall.
It was, and this might be low, but I'm going to say it was at least around $300,000 for that.
I mean, probably the most cost-efficient way would be to just build onto that building, but it'd also be nice to get that closed in back there so that would be secure. So.
And the board has talked about closing the underneath the stadium, the new stadium, for storage too. So there's 3 examples right there.
Sure.
Where it has discussed it and Jeff.
Yeah, the ultimate plan would be to put steel around the stadium
Right.
seating.
Yeah.
And with a couple of, I'll say, small garage doors that
Yeah.
would roll up that you could use at. That location's not necessarily watertight, but it would certainly keep things out of the elements, and you could put pallets out there and keep things up off the ground to prevent any kind of freezing.
It'd be nice to just have a kind of a wish list or at least various options with prices so that when we talk budget, if we want to put it in the budget, we could do that, or if we can't fit it in, we'll just, put it off till the next year. But
I can get Roger to get some price quotes for a couple of those different things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just don't want to ignore those concerns.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
Okay. Move on to
Well, you want the budget comparison?
Oh, sorry, yes, budget comparison.
So we have, at the end of November in 2017, budget used 32.61%. And if I go to 18, we are about 4% higher, 36.05% of the budget has been spent. So we're in the ballpark. If you remember last month, I kind of talked about a larger initial starting point so that the percentages are relatively close. When you have a little bit more money to start with, your percentage is a little bit lower. The one thing I would point out in debt retirement, we're a little bit higher in November this year, and part of that I asked Marcia to print out some reports as to why we were spending a little bit more money there. And being the newbie, when I heard debt retirement, it's like, okay, what are we paying off? Is it a loan? What debt is being retired? But it's basically money owed somewhere, and in this case it would be a computer lease. We leased the MacBook, so there was a payment that was due at this point in time, and that increased that particular fund. The spending out of that fund was up a little bit higher this year compared to last year. So
it was budgeted for or not?
It was budgeted for, yes. Okay. So we're pretty close to where we were in 17 and 18 as far as our expenses so far throughout the school year. Okay?
Okay. Let's move on to school report card.
Can I suggest we flip and do 2 before 1, given the time?
Sure. Okay. Future
I mean, if
referendum
we need to make a
options
motion
for-
to do that, let's change the agenda, that's fine.
Remove it. Okay, future referendum options. Yeah, that's right. Where do you want to go?
I did not ask to put this on the agenda, so whoever has to put on the agenda.
Well, as the discussion unfolded here tonight, you can see there is opinion out there in the community that would like to see us take a look at the benefit of moving the school, the elementary school up to the high school site. I did not support the early referendum, the remodel, for various reasons. I would say that spending just short of $12 million down there, again, I think that really deserves a second look.
If we have to put a referendum question on the April ballot, they have to be on by January?
January 22nd is our deadline.
January 22nd. So I think with the communication I've had and communication we've had tonight, I think we owe it to the community to allow them to have a voice in whether they want a new elementary or not want or go with the remodel. I personally think we should have a referendum question in April. I think that gives them a choice. If it passes, it passes. If it fails, it fails. But we've given them a choice, which they seem to want.
And they deserve it. and they deserve.
And they deserve, yes.
I agree with what you guys are both saying. My concern is if we go to referendum and the new school doesn't pass, we of course fall back on this one, but then will we still be able to start this summer? That's my concern.
Well, we're asking for request for proposal. We're asking for architects to give us some request for proposal. They want in, they're interested in what their fees would be. That's Monday. And the idea would be to select an architect next week prior to Christmas break, and that is specifically for the addition remodel project. So if we hire somebody and we'll start paying them for their services, and if you're going to referendum in April for a new building, we're paying somebody for services that we may not be using. If we
No way.
If we go to referendum in April and it's not successful, we have to keep the addition remodel, we have to keep that job moving forward in order to break ground this spring. And we're gonna have to pay for everything that leads up to that. And then if the referendum is successful, we would stop payment there and start all over again, get a new design, and all of the fees that would go with that.
I would just comment, Mitch, I think you could negotiate, if it does come to pass, if there's a referendum item on April, that their fees should be rolled into that existing or potential new project. You could make that in there.
That's gonna be, we're asking them to donate
A lot of work if it
all of
doesn't
their
go
first work, because it's gonna be a completely different set of
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
drawings.
They're gonna spend 3 months on schematic designs for the elementary school. They're gonna have a contractor already. They're gonna have bids for subcontractors and materials by April. You know,
I mean,
that's a lot of,
I don't think we can pay somebody in the meantime to do the elementary, that remodel.
right.
Because that's just, I mean, that's a waste of money.
We would have-
If
we would
the
have
school
to-
passes, if the new school passes, then we've wasted X amount of dollars. So we need to decide if we're gonna wait until the referendum and then start on either or. I mean, how far is it gonna put us back? Is it gonna put us back?
To me, if
At least a
this
year.
is something we're serious about doing, I think we need to take action by next Monday.
That's right. If it will postpone the remodel by a year, but that's a 2.5-year project. And if the new school passes, we've been told less than a year. So
Right.
theoretically, if we could get this passed, we could have a new building in half the time. But our dilemma is.
Well, I mean, I would not vote for paying an architect and everything up till April and then have a referendum. I think we just need to put that on hold, and although it'll take, some time to go back with the elementary, at least we will, I think we will have done it right. We're giving the community the chance to vote. If they vote for the building, then we have the new building. If they vote for the old building, we still go ahead with it, but it'll be a little later.
There's a, part of this is, in my opinion, and I know some people agree, and I'm still on the fence on this whole thing. We gave opportunities for people to come and talk. And until I am completely convinced that people did not understand the question, or were ill-informed, which I don't believe they were, or the one thing I don't think they knew that there would be other options, until I can kind of be convinced of those things, I mean, we did have an election and the vote passed. I mean, not everybody likes it. We've had elections like that. People stomped their feet because they didn't like it. It passed. That's my problem.
I don't think it's not they didn't like it, it's that they didn't have a choice.
And that's what I need to be convinced of, that there was that much confusion. And from what I've been asking people, it's kind of leaning that way. Personal people, they've said, but this says not staff.
Let me read the resolution, if you can just.
Yeah.
Just so that, and you can tell me if this was confusing or misleading at all. So, shall the Mineral Point Unified School District Iowa, Lafayette counties, Wisconsin, be authorized to pursue in Chapter 67 statutes general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $11,920,000 for the public purpose of paying the cost of an elementary school building and improvement program consisting of code, maintenance, ADA improvements, renovations and updates, parking, bus lane, site, and stormwater improvements, construction of an addition for a secure lobby, offices and classrooms, and an addition for physical education and a gymnasium, and acquisition of related furnishings, fixtures, and equipment.
No,
Does it say where though?
You know, that's understandable, but I'm saying.
No, it talks about improvements, renovations.
Doc, I understand.
It doesn't say where. I think we all get the reference.
I understand, but I was trying to just listen to you 100% there, and I'm like, waiting for the general public. And I know there was a lot of people that weren't informed because there was, the line was out the door for people to register to vote, so I'm assuming they weren't coming to the school meetings.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that if someone read this, they might construe that this means a new school on a different site?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
That's a pretty
I'm not
presumption.
I'm not saying that. I didn't say that.
And let me just say, I totally get that there is a significant amount of this community that want a new school. I totally get that a significant amount of staff want a new school. I'm surprised the survey wasn't 100% in favor. So here's my problem, you know. Everyone who wanted a new school voted in November. So the resolution put to question was not for a new school. So if, as a voter, you wanted a new school, you do not vote for something that's not a new school. You vote no, okay?
Right? That makes sense to you and I.
Not necessarily, because you don't have another choice. So I have a kid going to elementary, I want it remodeled if I can't have a new school.
Okay,
that's my choice.
Let me paint a different analogy, okay? And again, let me preface this by saying that I am not representing any camp. I'm not speaking for the new camp, I'm not speaking for the remodel camp. And I would ask that you put your biases aside on whether you want a new or remodel school or neither. My concerns are related to the fact that we went to the public with the resolution and we had 86% voter turnout, which is better than any survey or straw poll that we have done or will do. It's going to be better than any turnout at April election or November election this year. And they voted yes, 1,116 to 961. Okay, so.
So do you think, I'm sorry, but
yes.
Do you really believe that that was totally that turnout because of the referendum or because of the election?
It doesn't matter. I mean,
it does a little bit.
Well, it is convenient that a lot of people were at the polls.
We had them, so.
But it's not like they were, I mean, it's not like, oh, hey, by the way, I know you're here for the governor, but there's a resolution, just vote yes or no. Don't even worry about it, don't even read it. You know, people knew what they were going to vote for, right? And the language is almost as crystal clear as we can get, right? So I know that there's a lot of people that want a new school, and I don't disagree necessarily, but I feel like we should be having this conversation if the referendum failed, right? My friend Tony here talks about the morality of a verbal handshake with one design firm about a contract, and we went to the community with a public trust saying, community, please tell us what to do.
And they came back to us and said,
do it.
We want a new school.
No, they didn't.
A lot of them did.
A lot of them, but not 1,116. Maybe 100 to Larry, maybe 100 to you, maybe 200 to Jeff.
What you're not understanding, I don't think, is you're not understanding. They didn't have a choice of a new school or a remodel. They had a remodel or nothing. Okay. Well, if I'm having kids at the elementary school, or if I'm a parent or a grandparent or whatever, and I walk into that elementary school and I see like it is now, I'm going to vote yes, I want a remodel because I can't have a new school.
Okay, let me paint a different analogy.
And I think we have, but I think, I don't understand why it's a big deal if we offer a referendum in April for our community. Why is that such an awful thing to do?
Because what about everyone that voted?
They get a chance to read.
They have a chance to go vote again?
Matt?
I had a question related to waiting. What was the cost of delaying a year? It felt like FEH had said something, Kramer Brothers had said something, like a percentage?
5% increase on construction
6 months
costs.
to a year, 5%.
So, I mean, that's just something I guess bear in mind. Things will have to go off the budget.
Right, so I mean, if we delay this project, we're looking at 5% increase of an $18 million project. That's almost $1 million.
And we still haven't had a foundation set.
So
That
listen,
could be a huge determinant.
That's nothing, that's,
okay,
But we
and,
don't, but that's a
and I
side,
get it,
that's,
you know,
we're
if,
playing.
if we go through this process and it looks like the speaker back there, like if it looks like this is gonna be way over budget, or if the foundation looks like this is gonna be way over budget, then I think we should revisit this, because that's not what the community agreed to. They didn't agree to a $15 million remodel project, right? 11.92, and that's what we should cap it at, you know, not to exceed, right? We should be true to this. And I'm having a problem not being true to a majority vote on this resolution that we asked the community to vote on. And I don't care what the referendum really would say. The point is, we went to the referendum with the resolution. And it doesn't matter what I feel, new or old or indifferent. And I know that there's a lot of new school people here that have strong opinions, and I get that. And I expected a lot stronger opinions than there were. I thought, you know, we might go to civil war on this issue, right? Based on, you know, moving the other schools up to the new campus and how that, you know, really tore the community too. But, you know, again, I think we should have had this conversation if the resolution failed. But it did not, and I'm feeling bound to move forward.
Is it possible, in retrospect, the board made originally a bad decision?
Well, let's talk about that, okay?
Yes,
so,
I do.
So we, the board, just for everyone present, the board voted on the language of this resolution 3 times.
Right.
We voted on it in June, and I said, please, community, please, if this is not what you want to vote on, please let me know. We voted on it in July, and said, please, we need community input on this. Is this the right resolution for the public? Remodel. And then we certified it in August, finally, okay? Now, this was not a unanimous vote.
No.
And, you know, the dissenting votes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the dissenting votes, none of them were, I'm not voting for this because I want a new school. I think that's what we need. And there was no one who came to the board meeting that said, don't vote on this resolution, we should have a new school. There were a few people that said, don't vote on this resolution because this is too much this is too extensive. And we can't handle the tax impact, and I totally get that. And so do the 900 plus no's, they get that. But the dissenting votes on this resolution were not in favor of a new school. What they were against was the tax impact of a $12 million project. And so even if we had discussed a new school in greater depth, and I would argue that it was discussed at the planning committee and it was on the community survey, and maybe we should have discussed it a little bit more, but there would have been no votes for the new school resolution. There would have been none. And maybe you have, you know, because you had voiced your opinion.
Strongly. And I told you at the end, I compromised because it seemed like the only option I was left with was the 11.9 remodel.
And I guess my point is,
because we had to do something that barely passed 4-3, if you remember.
That's right.
It's like, oh my God.
That's right.
And none of it makes any sense to me.
And I
really
think,
doesn't.
and I believe in hindsight.
Yeah, I do too.
I believe in hindsight that the compromise will end up being the right decision. Because I think
what I don't understand about all this is why does, I know there's delay. I know there's a little bit of price increase. I'd rather spend more money to get it right than to have it wrong. What's the harm in having an April referendum? If they say no, it's good.
This is how I'm viewing it. And again, this is on principle, but tell me how I'm wrong. Okay, so, and I've lost a lot of sleep over this, believe me, and I don't want people to be upset with me, but think about it this way. Let's say the new school voters are like Ted Cruz fans, okay? And we had the Trump election, the presidential election, 2016, okay? Ted Cruz was not on the ballot. It was Hillary versus Trump. And maybe a lot of Ted Cruz voters voted for Trump because they wanted a Republican in the White House, right?
Well, they didn't like Hillary.
Well, or they didn't like Hillary, and a lot of them probably didn't think Trump would win, right? And so Ted Cruz goes to the powers that be, let's say it's at this table, after the election, Ted Cruz campaign goes to the board and says, goes to the powers that be and says, hey, I want a new election.
Well,
I want, because who knew Trump was gonna win?
I gotta interrupt you a little bit. The analogy doesn't work because we have the option here of having a new election. He doesn't.
Okay, so.
It doesn't work in my mind.
You don't feel like this election binds us in any way?
It does, in Texas. It does bind us, because if it fails in April, then we'll have to do 11-9.
Okay, let me ask one more question, Joel. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, because I gotta go to the concert soon, so I want to.
Okay, I do too. So what if we go to referendum? Okay, so there were 1,116 yes votes on this resolution. What if we go to resolution for a new school and we get 900 yes votes? It still passes, 900 to 700.
Yeah.
What if we get 950? What if we get 1115
What's
yes
the
for a new
difference if it
school?
passes by 1 or 4 or 10 or 50 or 100?
Because now the remodel isn't on the ballot.
No, but it's there in place.
No, it's
It
there.
doesn't go away.
Right,
I make a
with
motion.
1,116 votes for it.
I'm gonna make a motion that we table this to a special meeting as an action item, so we don't have to continue
Yes,
having this conversation.
I second that.
Every meeting, and I think it needs to happen prior to interviewing architects, which is next Tuesday.
Hopefully Thursday.
Okay.
We'd look at
Next
Wednesday or Thursday would be the day we'd look at.
So I think if we need to, I think if we need to send emails out to let all of our parents know that this is the lone agenda item. I guess I have a slight problem rewarding apathy too, is that people don't get involved until they don't like the outcome. So I think we give them the opportunity and we decide. Otherwise, we're gonna keep having this conversation. And to me, the worst outcome is we decide not to have a question and we can't build this summer because we had 5 discussions.
This is only informational.
Right.
So
Right,
you
so
got
I
a
think-
motion and we got a second.
Who seconded it?
Tony.
Yep.
Do you want to actually put a date in there, next Monday?
Right.
The 17th.
I guess what works for everybody.
When are we reviewing the bids?
I think that's Wednesday.
Wednesday after the 17th? They're due the 17th,
They're
right?
due the 17th.
And we're going to review them on Wednesday?
Yes.
So we're reviewing Wednesday interviews Thursday.
So the 17th.
Well, that works for me.
What's good is it'll give them like one last chance to yell at us or whatever they want to do.
And we may just want to plan a meeting in the library.
Okay. Do you want to call the question, please?
So we're tabling this discussion to a special meeting when?
Center 17th at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Bush.
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
Dahl.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes. Did everybody hear that? We're having the special meeting a week from tonight at 6 p.m. As an action item. School report card.
So school report cards, you have a district report card, it lumps all of the buildings together. Our district score came in as an 87.1. As a district, we significantly exceed expectations again. That number is down a little bit from last year. We were second in the state in schools, public schools 9-12. This score puts us 8th in the state, so still in the top 10. We have a high school score of 75.5, still exceeds expectations, and I have some people here that want to speak to that high school score. Our middle school score is 85.3, significantly exceeds, and our elementary is an 89.9, significantly exceeds. So I will turn the floor over to some of the staff members from the high school who wish to speak to that high school number.
Can I make a comment real quick, Mitch?
Yeah.
Just, we played in Fenimore on Friday, and walking into the building on each side of the hallway were huge banners for their scores, 4 stars, 4-star scores. and huge banners on the front of the program were all their scores, and Fenimore's a good school district, but not, you know, not where we were at, and they were there touting their scores as many places as they can. So I think just that further speaks to the quality of our scores, that schools with lower scores are advertising them everywhere they can.
So, we don't need to brag about it.
Act like we've been there before. In some discussions with Mitch, in looking at our school report card, one of the things that tends to be kind of glaring when you look at it is our middle school's got a, you know, an 89 score, and our elementary's got a 92 score, or whatever. And our high school seems to be lagging behind with a 75, 76 score. So why is that? What's going on there? I know there's been some community members, some board members that have expressed that concern, and believe me, you're not alone. It's a concern of ours too. We would look at that as, okay, what is going on here? What are we not doing right? What's actually happening here? And so we had to really do some digging into the data of how those scores are actually calculated. And in order to really have an accurate picture of things, you really do need an apples to apples comparison. And even within our own district, even within the 3 schools, it's really not an apples to apples comparison of score. If you look at how the scores are calculated, the high school score, the 912 score, comes only from our achievement score in English language arts and mathematics. Only on the ACT test on one day of the year for one class only. So it's a snapshot of our junior class for that one moment in time, and that's how our entire high school is based. For our middle school and elementary school, they use the forward exam, so it's a different tool with which they are actually evaluated. It's really not an apples to apples. They're testing, you know, different types of skills with those, and they can show growth patterns through time to see how much kids are learning year to year to year. We don't have that opportunity, at least not yet, because the state doesn't recognize the ACT Aspire as a growth tool to measure our kids learning year to year to year. We get a snapshot. And so if you look at the report cards, there is a growth score that shows up, school growth. If you look at that score from our middle school, they get a 92.5 score on their school growth, which is a boost to their score. And looking at a lot of other schools that also qualify for that school growth, Pecatonica High School, for example, since they're a 612 school, they get a growth score from their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. This year they had an exceptional growth score. And so their high school score overall exceeded ours. They were an 82 or something on their score. So, but because not every high school has that opportunity to show growth, the other one there is the closing gaps score. The closing gaps is only available if your population of students at need, economically disadvantaged ethnic groups, or special needs students, disability students, exceed a certain number. And we currently don't meet that criteria, so we don't have the opportunity for that score. So what we looked at comparing us to middle schools and high schools, Ben's going to show some data in a bit as to why that's not necessarily a fair comparison, a middle school, elementary compared to high school, because we're not judged on the same criteria. It is a different measuring stick. So we did some comparing high school to high school. How are we doing compared to local schools? How are we doing in the area? And so, Ben, if you put that spreadsheet with the CISA schools. So I've gone back and compared us to, no, the other one.
That's not on his computer anymore, it's on just there. So we gotta get that up.
The CISA 3. So anyways, we looked at going back like 5 years at schools all within our CISA district. How are we doing compared to local schools? And make sure you go to that tab. So that's the ACT. Click on the school report cards. So if you look at our scores, this is the rolling average over the 6 years that the school report cards have been available. And if you look at us compared to our neighboring schools, we are faring fairly well. We are certainly within, the top 10%, 5% of our CISA, right there within striking distance. Even a couple of those that exceed us,
have a population of disadvantaged students where they earn a closing gap score, and that usually boosts their score for a year or two. And so if it's a truly even apples to apples, even based on our CISA, you know, that paints a much clearer picture, I think, of how we're actually, you know, doing locally. Is it a concern of ours that we're not at the very top? Is it a concern of ours that we still are not greatly exceeding? Absolutely. And we're going to speak to a little bit about, you know, what some measures that we are trying to do in order to do that. But we did want to let people know that this is not something we are taking lightly. It's something we have taken very seriously and things. So, Ben, if you want to show your...
Yep, sure.
Jeff, do you have
You say it's measured on our side. Once a year.
This is for the high school, yeah.
Yeah, I did if you
And only on the reading and math, there's language arts and math, not on
Right, so no science.
no science,
Even if you did repeat it, it's not like you can't realize what are we doing one this year? It's because we actually did things that got us
On the graduation.
Yeah, it shows us a little bit.
So we're having trouble hooking up the MacBook and sharing the data over to Mitch's laptop, but if you look at the three pie charts that we have here, in the very center, it's saying that if you scored greater than or equal to a 73, you exceed expectations, and greater than or equal to 83, you significantly exceed, and that's elementary, middle, and high. So we're all shooting for the same target, but you can see the elementary school in the upper left, their median score is almost 75. And so the typical elementary school is exceeding expectations. And the median score for the middle school is 72. They're also, you know, right on the cusp of exceeding. The median score for the high school is, you know, significantly lower. They're at around 68. And so then if you look at the top two categories, the exceeding or significantly exceeding, 58% of elementary schools are in one of those two categories, 43% of middle schools, but only 32% of high schools. And so just looking at all districts across the state, it seems like it's a little bit more difficult for high schools to exceed as well as significantly exceed expectations. So breaking that data down even further, if you look in the backside there, so as you know, we rank 91st out of 370 schools in the state, and that's at the 75th percentile. This is the high school. We're 91st out of the 370 high schools, 75th percentile, and only 26 of them significantly exceed expectations. And of those 26, there are 10 of them that are private or charter schools, which kind of don't play exactly by the same rules. And of the 16 other schools that significantly exceed, only 2 of them are considered rural. And so if you look at that, 2 rural public high schools significantly exceed expectation. Well, it's no wonder that we aren't significantly exceeding expectation. 2 out of 370 is a very small percent. And so what Tom mentioned before was the closing gap score, which is out of our control. We don't control the kids coming in necessarily, and so we're not given that closing gap score. But we're compared to schools who are given a closing gap score. And if you look, you know, in the center of the page there where it says no closing gap score, so that would be like us. Our report card score is 80% from our student achievement, 20% from our on track if kids are graduating and so on time. However, the schools that are given a closing gap score, that 80% achievement is cut in half. And so their student achievement is only weighted half of what it is compared to schools without a closing gap score. The other 40% comes from that closing gap score. So the next bullet point there, it says that of the 90 high schools that had a higher report card score than we did, 67 of them were given that closing gap score. And for almost all of them, that boosted their overall report card score. But rather than compare ourselves to them, the next bullet point compares us to the schools like us that were not given a closing gap score. So of the 370 high schools, 244 of them were not given a closing gap score. And of those 244 schools, Mineral Point High School ranks 24th. And so the 23 schools that beat us, 12 of them, or more than half, were private or charter, And of the other 11, there was only one with a higher percentage of students with disabilities, and there were only 3 with a higher percentage of economically disadvantaged students. So, you know, regardless of the way the score looks, and if you just look at the report card score without digging deeper, you know, it paints a little bit different picture than if you dig down and actually compare, you know, apples to apples. But the next asterisk there, it's saying perhaps we should compare using our achievement score and just kind of disregard the closing gap score because we don't control that part of it. And so if we're comparing just the student achievement, Mineral Point ranks 66th out of 370, and that puts us at the 82nd percentile. You can see the math and English breakdown there. But there was no rural public high school ranked higher than 32. So it's difficult as a rural public high school, if you don't receive a closing gap score, it's really hard to significantly exceed expectation. So there's only 10 rural public high schools that had a higher achievement score than us, and only 6 of them with an enrollment 400 or less that have a higher enrollment than us, or have a higher achievement score than us. And so I think that just goes to show that even though our score compared to the elementary and middle school is less, really I think we're doing okay if you really drill down here. So specific to the CISA 3 that we're in, there were 8 schools that beat us that had a higher report card score, and only Darlington didn't qualify for a closing gap score. And Platteville, they did qualify, but their score did not increase. And our achievement score was 3rd, just a couple points, so you know, right in the ballpark of those other 2. And so then if you look at the 3 different levels, the overall ELA and math, our score versus the state average, you know, we're exceeding in all three scenarios. So a lot of words and percentages, numbers, but sorry, I wasn't able to show it up here, but hopefully you got a little bit of that.
I'm just curious, how do they calculate a closing gap
Yeah, I was
score?
gonna ask the
Because
same
there's so
question.
many criteria, disability, economically disadvantaged, you know, racial diversity, how do they come up with that?
Well, if we could break down the 100-page document that,
oh, it's that
explains
detail.
it. Yeah, but what we could find was that the DPI requirement required a sample size of 20 students or more.
Oh.
We were expecting it to be a percentage, you know, but it seemed to be 20 students or more in any of the 3 or 4 subgroups.
Yeah.
And if you didn't meet the 20 student minimum, which we figured we would.
And that's the other thing about only having a 1-year snapshot, it would only be our junior class.
Right.
Oh. Would have to have the 20 students in there, so if you
Oh,
only have
sure.
54 kids, that's almost half of your kids.
Tell a
that
few of them
make
to get
that.
promoted.
So,
For one day.
in the elementary and middle schools, it's their entire population that they need that 20 and they can show that. And what they try to show is growth from, you know, a student with a disability compared to a student without a disability in the state. What's the state average kid doing compared to what are kids with disability doing? If you're doing better, then you get plus points. If you're doing minus, that's essentially how that's calculated. So.
I need to get going. I got one last question. This
Yeah.
ACT, this ramp up with ACT.
So the ACT.
We can increase our score by 1 point.
Oh, 2. So if you bring up that other document real quickly, so there's your rolling, basically average each year. So last year, our senior class this year, they gained an average of 3 points on the English, full point on the math, which is definitely difficult to do. Reading, they were 1.24, and in science, we were almost 2 points, we were 1.83.
All right.
But overall, it's almost like a 2-point increase.
That's in a month.
That's a month. That's in 4 weeks, 3 days a week during RTI that we have gotten them to this point. So this year, we took the pre-ACT, we took that back in October, which kind of gives us a baseline, and actually really neat to start digging through that to see, well, why are our kids missing these types of questions? Because it breaks it down for us. Well, these are the skills that we need to work on. And over the last couple of years, we've actually taken the ACT test and broken them into different categories to help those kids. You know, if you're getting between a 15 and an 18, how can we help you specifically get a better score? So because you need to get these questions right, and you got to stretch and get some of those next ones.
And the ACT is taken in February.
The ACT is February
When do we
22nd.
have the result?
When do we have the results? It's about 4 to 6 weeks out.
Yeah, the kids always get it back longer before,
They do.
quicker than the school does.
What we tend to do is tell them when they get it back, bring it in. And if we didn't have everything hit on here, you'd see all the names with their scores before and after and how we calculate all that.
It'll be nice to get it back as soon as we can, and we'll use that information to determine which is contract.
Yeah, we also calculated a closing gap.
No pressure on any of us.
Congratulations.
Every junior kid goes through.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Like Mitch
I'll make a
said,
motion to
the,
adjourn.